There was something different in the atmosphere when Melissa walked back into the house. It wasn't just a lingering scent of lavender or the exotic oils. She couldn't stop gushing about from that spa she'd been obsessed with. No, it was her. She carried a glow, a brightness that hadn't been there in months. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes alive with a sparkle that made her look almost electric, rejuvenated in a way I couldn't name, though deep down, I had a terrible idea. "How is it?" I asked, keeping my tone even as she drifted past me, humming a melody I didn't recognize. "Colton, it was heavenly. Absolutely heavenly," she said, letting her purse fall onto the kitchen counter with a flick of the wrist that was all too familiar. They do this facial massage. It honestly took a decade off my face. You should try it sometime. I watched her closely, narrowing my eyes. A decade off her face, or a decade's worth of guilt scrubbed clean. The suspicion hadn't come out of nowhere. It started as a whisper in the back of my mind and grew into a monstrous certainty. Late hours at work, hushed conversations over the phone, the way she recoiled slightly whenever I reached for her. It was all part of a picture I didn't want to finish painting. But I had. That's why I brought in a professional. The private investigators. Findings hit like a sledgehammer. Photos, timelines, evidence laid out with brutal clarity. And the man? A stranger. Some younger trainer from the gym. The kind of guy Melissa probably thought made her feel alive again. Since reading that report, I'd spent every hour preparing. Not to explode. Not to plead. But to deliver a message that would land with the way it deserved. A message she wouldn't forget. "I'm glad you had a good time," I said, forcing a grin that felt more like baring teeth. "I made dinner for us." She raised her brows, surprised. "You? Cooking? Usually I'm the one dialing takeout." "That's true," I replied, gesturing toward the dining room. The table was set like a scene from a romantic film. Our finest china, polished silverware, candles burning low, her favorite flowers arranged neatly in the center. I had spared no effort. Her eyes widened at the sight, a soft gasp escaping her lips. "Colton, this is beautiful," she murmured, her voice edged with something that almost sounded like guilt. I pulled out her chair. "Please have a seat." She eased into it cautiously, glancing around as if unsure whether to be delighted or alarmed. At the center of the table, the only dish sat under a silver dome. I stood behind her, voice taut as piano wire. "I made something special, just for you." With a practiced motion, I lifted the cloche. But instead of a carefully prepared entree, what lay beneath was the investigator's report. Photographs, dates, intimate snapshots of betrayal, all arranged like a macabre platter of secrets. The color drained from her face as she stared. Her breathing grew erratic. One hand flew to her mouth, her polished nails trembling. "W, what is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "A recap of your spa retreat," I said evenly. "Or should I say your gym session? The one where you got a real workout in with your trainer." Her knees buckled. She slid off the chair, crumbling to the floor as if her body could no longer hold itself up. Eyes wide, she reached for me. "Colton, please. It's not what it looks like. You have to believe me." "I believe I understand perfectly," I said coldly. "I understand you've been lying, that while I work to support this life, you were out creating another with someone else. I see you now for what you really are." Tears began pouring down her cheeks, mascara smearing in black trails. She looked undone, unrecognizable from the composed woman who had walked in humming minutes earlier. For a brief second, something inside me twisted with sympathy, but it was gone just as quickly, smothered by the fire that had fueled me for days. "I'm so sorry, Colton. I don't know what came over me." "Please, forgive me," she sobbed, crawling forward, clinging to a hope that was already dead. I stood tall, towering above her, every inch of me composed. I'd rehearsed this exact moment 100 times. Now that it was here, it felt almost surreal, like I was watching someone else live it. "Forgive you?" My voice was razor sharp. "You think saying sorry fixes this? That everything goes back to the way it was? This isn't some scripted drama, Melissa. This is our life. And you've set fire to it." I walked calmly into the living room, picked up a folder from the table and held it up. I already spoke with an attorney. The divorce papers are being filed. You'll be served tomorrow. I want you out by the end of the week. I've started packing your essentials. Her cries escalated into wails, her body shaking with each breath. She looked up at me, red-dyed and broken. But where am I supposed to go? Not my concern anymore. I replied, turning away. You made your choice. Now live with it. She wept harder behind me. But I didn't stop or look back. I went into the kitchen, uncorked the whiskey, and poured myself a glass. From the archway, I watched her collapse beside the dining table, a wreck of what she once was. And I felt nothing, no anger, no pain, just an eerie stillness, as if the storm had passed and left only silence in its wake. It wasn't triumph, not exactly, but it was closure. She came home glowing, thinking she'd gotten away with everything. Now she was spiraling, watching the world collapse around her, and she had no one to blame but herself. I took a long sip of whiskey and headed toward the bedroom. Her sobs echoed through the house as I shut the door. That was the final sound of our marriage.